Good morning, students. We are going to start with the first lesson in chemistry, matter in our surroundings. How do we define matter? Matter is anything which occupies space and has mass. Whatever things we come across around us, across us, like stones, like clouds, stars, plants, animals, even a small drop of water, or we can say even a particle of sand, they all are examples of matter. So when you are holding the phone in your hand, when you feel the air around you, they are also example of matter. Now, matter can be any substance which has got good amount of weight. So maybe the stones, they have got good weight, so you can say they are matter. But when you talk about air, air is something we can feel, but how do we find out that air occupies space and has got mass? How do we say that air is an example of matter? You would recall an experiment done in your previous classes where you take air in balloon and then you take two balloons, put it across the scale, put one balloon on one side, put the other balloon on the other side so that the scale is straight. Now prick one balloon and deflate it. Let the air come out from one balloon. What do we find out? That this scale, which was initially straight, it bends down in the direction of the balloon, which is inflated. Indian philosophers classified matter in the form of 5 basic elements. We also call them as Panch Tattva, that is air, earth, fire, sky and water. According to them, everything, whether it is living or non-living, is made up of all these 5 elements. So everything, the matter is made up of these पंच तत्व, पांच तत्वों का बना है. We call this पंच तत्व as this matter also as padarth. So we are made up of all these 5 elements, and when these things die, they again become a part of all these 5 elements. Greek philosophers were also studying matter, and they also came up to the same conclusion that matter is made up of these 5 elements. We talk about the modern day scientists. Modern day scientists have evolved the classification of matter based on the physical properties of the matter and the chemical properties of the matter. In this lesson, we are going to talk about only the physical properties of matter. So, physical nature of matter. Matter is made up of particles. For a long time, there were 2 schools of thought. Now, when we talk about 2 schools of thought, this means that there were 2 groups of scientists, that time we call them as philosophers, who had different opinions about the nature of matter. One group believed that matter is continuous, like a block of wood or maybe like this book. But the other group, the other school of thought, believed that matter is made up of particles, just like the particles of sand or particles of salt. Now, science requires some kind of the proof to say that yes, this particular thing exists. So they need some fact. We can prove the particulate nature of matter by performing some activities. So here is this activity. In this activity, we take a beaker, about 100 milliliter of beaker, fill it half with water and mark the level of the water. Suppose it is 100 milliliter. We are going to take a spoonful of salt or maybe sugar. 1 spoonful of salt or sugar would be equal to 5 grams. So we are going to add 1 teaspoon of salt or sugar into the beaker and stir it. Let the sugar or salt dissolve. Now, what should be the volume of this beaker? Initially it was 100 milliliter of water, plus we added 5 grams of salt and sugar. So total should be 105. But what do we observe? That in this beaker, the level of water remains 100 milliliter. No change of level took place. Plus, salt and sugar, whichever we have added, are nowhere to be seen. Where have the particles of salt or sugar gone? Where have they disappeared? So we answer it in this way. When we dissolve salt or sugar in water, the particles of salt, that is particle of one type of matter, get into the spaces between particles of water, that is another kind of matter. So with this activity, we prove 2 things. 1, matter is made up of particles, and second, the particles have got spaces between them. Now we are going to find out how small these particles of matter are. So let us find out how small these particles of matter are. We perform one activity here. Take 100 milliliter of beaker, fill it half with water. The water amount should be 100 milliliter. We add few crystals of potassium permanganate. Now this is a chemical which is purple in color. As a result, the entire water would turn dark purple color. Take about 10 milliliter of this colored water, add it again into a beaker, add 90 milliliter of water so that the total volume becomes 100 milliliter. We find that the color of this water becomes purplish, pinkish again, but this color is little lighter than the previous beaker. Again, take 10 milliliter of this colored water, add this water into the beaker, add 90 milliliter of clear water into this beaker to make the volume 100 milliliter. We find again the entire water is colored and the color of this water is lighter than the previous beakers. We repeat this particular activity for number of dilutions. What we are doing right now is called as dilution. Means we take 10 milliliter of the colored water, add 90 milliliter of clear water. So this is dilution. This final volume 100 milliliter of this water again is colored, but again we find that this color is fainter than the previous ones. यानी हर बार dilution करने पर पानी का रंग पिंक रहता है, लेकिन ये पिंक हर बार फीका होता रहता है. So what does this experiment shows? This experiment shows that just a few crystals of potassium permanganate can color a large volume of water, about 1000 liter. You can see here, you have taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 500 milliliter of water. The color has become fainter and fainter with each dilution. So as you keep on doing it number of times, the color will become very faint. We conclude that there must be millions of tiny particles in just one crystal of potassium permanganate, which keep on dividing themselves into smaller and smaller particles. So what do we conclude? We say matter is made up of particles. This is number one. And number two, these particles are millions in number. Right. We can repeat the same activity using Dettol. Now we all have Dettol in our houses. So you can take 2 milliliter of Dettol instead of potassium permanganate. Carry out the same activity using your glasses, and you find out that even after repeated dilutions, you can still smell Dettol because the particles of Dettol still persist, still remain even after number of dilutions.